Hello class, today we'll be talking about the Roaring Twenties and America after World War One. So after World War One, people are coming home, all the soldiers are moving back. This is after the Great Migration and different things have formed. And all the factories were turned to, as we knew, they were producing war materials. A lot of the economy was up in turmoil and different things were occurring. So Warren G. Harding runs for presidency. His campaign slogan is simply a return to normalcy. And with that, the Americans loved him, and he was expected to be one of the greatest presidents ever. So he was elected, and he became president. During this time period, this is after World War One, approximately 2 million soldiers are coming home. These guys are looking for work they left previously before going to war. And when they returned home, home was a lot different than when they left. Factories were closing because obviously they were no longer outsourcing wartime goods for the European nations and for their own soldiers. So we're moving into something known as a recession. At the turn of the century and through until 1929, the Roaring Twenties in the 1920s, there are three presidents that you need to know. They are Warren G. Harding from 1921 to 1923, Calvin Coolidge from 1923 to 29, and then Herbert Hoover, 29 to roughly 33. These also the big thing that you need to know about these guys is that they were all Republicans, all three, and all three had pretty much the same ideas as how to run the government itself. And this is different coming off of the democratic look that we were coming off from the progressive era. Warren G. Harding, he died in office, and then his successors were Coolidge and Hoover. One thing you need to know to maybe help you kind of understand these guys is just think 1920s it was Hard, Cool, Hoove. Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover. Continuing on, let's talk a little bit about President Harding. He had a corrupt cabinet. That's one thing you need to know about him. He brought in his kind of like his own buddies, and they were known as the Ohio Gang. So please know the Ohio Gang. Take note of that now. The Ohio Gang was Harding's old buddies from Ohio. They were very corrupt, and they all stole money from the government, creating different scandals and different things that we see that played out throughout the 20s. Charles Forbes, he was one of Harding's old buddies. He was the head of the Veterans Bureau. He stole millions of dollars from the bureau. After Hoover realized it, Hoover said, "I can take care of my enemies all right, but my friends, they're the ones that keep me walking the floors at night." So, despite the Ohio Gang and Herbert Hoover, his role as president was a little different than what he had as his buddies. He was a very hardworking and honest guy, and it was the fact of the betrayals from his buddies that people speculate of why he possibly died as a heart attack while he was in office. One of these scandals is contributed to Robert Fall, one of the guys in the Ohio Gang, that it was known as the Teapot Dome Scandal. Please take note of that now. This was basically it was a bribe that was to give. It was a bribe to Robert Fall that if he would give and lease government land to oil executives, that he would kind of be given a little something under the table. So this is known as the Teapot Dome Scandal. Following after he dies in office, comes his vice president Calvin Coolidge. He becomes president. He was also known as Silent Cal. He spoke very little. Harding loved to throw parties and give long speeches. And Coolidge, he was more of your quiet guy, but when he spoke, you really had to make sure that you paid attention. When he becomes president after Harding dies, he forces all of the corrupt officials, so the Ohio Gang members, to resign. And because of that, he was reelected in 1924 with his slogan, "Keep Cool with Courage." Coleridge, he also cut regulations on business. He allowed Americans' incomes to rise. People began to buy refrigerators, radios, vacuums, and other different appliances. So through his business ideas, he was allowing the consumers of America to boom. But this was, in theory, helping the businesses and different people of that nature. They began to advertise their products. So a lot of what we see today through advertising, commercials, magazines, and different things like that, through the push of Coleridge and the way he asked people to make sure that we could buy different things, it was because of this. He was known as Coleridge Prosperity. One of his quotes was, "The business of America is business. The man who builds a factory builds a temple. The man who works there worships there." So he was a huge guy all about business. This kind of had a twofold story that lied between them. On one end, helping business. We were coming out of the war, so he's obviously pushing big business in different areas to grow America as a whole. However, it's a twofold, and on the bad scale of things, because of how he did it, the things that he implemented to allow this for all the Americans to begin. One of the ways was buying on credit. Take note of this now. The idea of buying on credit is an installment buying. That's another term for it. It's basically buy now, pay later, kind of like an actual credit card. You have the plastic and you pay for whatever you want, and you have a bill sent later. Well, this allowed for demands for goods to jump and the American business as a whole to rise. However, there was one small little thing that no one really realized, and the quote following kind of shows it. And it says, "If we want anything, all we have to do is go and buy it on credit. So it leaves us without any economic problems whatsoever, except that perhaps some day we may have to pay it back for them." So you can see where possibly the idea became to where people would buy and buy and buy to a point where they were not allowed or not even capable of paying the money back. This that kind of was a twofold off of something known as the stock market. By the late 1920s, more people are investing in stock. People are becoming richer overnight. We have something known as a bull market. This was a period of rapidly increasing stock. Prices of stocks were rising more quickly than the value of companies themselves. So the idea of stock was putting money into a specific company in hopes that the company's stock, so its value would grow, and whenever you wanted to buy out, you bought out at a higher rate, and that's how you would make the money. Another foreign policy during the 1920s, most of all Americans, including Harding and Coleridge, they wanted to remain isolated. However, one, the U.S. still needed to protect its economic interests in Mexico. Two, the U.S. had to give $10 million to Russia to help during their famine. Please note that the Russians are coming out of something known as the Russian Revolution. So we're doing this to kind of waive the idea of war, because World War I has just ended. It was, in theory, the war to end all wars. However, it's starting to come back, and the idea is starting to surface again. It's kind of scaring people. So this was kind of a way that we were helping Russia hopefully ease the turmoil or anything that will come up between the United States and Russia. Then our third point is that the U.S. has signed something known as the Kellogg-Briand Pact. This was a pact with 61 other nations, and it was basically in a nutshell, something that was to outlaw war itself. Quick quote, it's just saying, "I'm hopeful that encouraged by example, all other nations of the world will join this human endeavor by adhering to present treaty as soon as it comes into force, to bring other peoples within the scope of benefit for provisions that's uniting the civil nations a common renunciation of war and as an instrument in the national policy. So this pact was kind of a branch off of the League of Nations or any other different kind of previous attempts to stop war as a whole. Now let's move on to kind of women during this time period. During this time period, women are gaining the right to vote. This is ending the progressive era and moving towards a world power and different kind of things like that. So in 1920, women now have the right to vote, and lady named Carrie Chapman Cape then sets up the League of Women Voters. This was a group that tried to educate people, women specifically, of how to ensure the right to help people vote. Some of the changes for women. Women are now going back to the home, and rather than working factories that they did during World War I. However, this is very important. Some of the women did want to stay in the workforce. This is forming jobs such as typists, cleaners, cooks, servants, seamstress, teachers, secretaries, and stock clerks. These are all formulating into more of women roles within the workforce. So women, they had gained so much during World War I that they did not want to lose it. So by not wanting to lose it, we are creating jobs that are more women-friendly, if you might say. Women are starting to buy something known as ready-made clothing. Instead of making their own clothing, we are now ordering out of catalogs, going to stores to purchase already clothing that is made for us. Many women then bought appliances to help them in the housework, refrigerators, different things like that. Then we have the impact of the automobile. Again, the Roaring Twenties is a rapid time period of growth and change, and just a whole lot of different things are happening within America right now. And the impact of the automobile is very key into how it's connecting the world in different places in different ways that it never had before. Besides Henry Ford's assembly line, making them all rapidly cheap, this is allowing people to have more of an opportunity and have more of a sense of independence. Even some people that might be looked at as poor were able to have automobiles. It was said that you could have any color as long as it was black. General Motors also becomes a popular seller of cars. So we have General Motors out in Michigan, or Detroit, that is now coming about. Drive-in theaters eventually pop up, fast food chains, hotels. These are all different inventions and developments that are a spin off of the Model T and Henry Ford's assembly line. Also through the assembly line, we have the rapid quickness of turnovers for different kind of things, ice boxes, refrigerators, simple things that we use today. There's changes in lifestyle due to the automobile. Millions of jobs are created. Oil refineries, highways are developed, trucking stops, gas stations, restaurants, and tourist stops. People are now going out on tourist attractions. This is something that brings the family more of a bonded together. Families are now moving to the suburbs. They are trying to escape the crowded conditions in the cities, trying to make better ways for their families. Let's now talk a little bit more about the different mass cultures that are changing. We have the radio and movies. The radio is a huge, very important invention because now people are actually able to hear key figures that they have seen on TVs or seen something else, and now they're actually able to hear them speaking towards them. And for a lot of actually presidents, this was their first time to have the opportunity to get within the homes of the people that they were going to run with. The movies, they brought things that were so far-fetched into reality. This is changing the way people look at the world itself, America, and people in general.